3 days before her grandmother died, the family dog stopped eating. It lay down outside the old woman's bedroom door and refused to move. It didn't bark, it didn't wag. It just stayed there, hour after hour, as if it were waiting for something. 3 days later, the grandmother passed away in her sleep. If you ask around, you'll find this story everywhere. The dog that wouldn't leave the hospice bed. The cat that suddenly became gentle with a dying owner it had ignored for years. The pet that went quiet and strange in the days before a death no one else saw coming. It happens far too often to be coincidence, which raises a question that sits somewhere between science and the supernatural. Do animals know when we're going to die? The most famous case happened in a nursing home in Providence, Rhode Island. At the Steerhouse Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, there lived a cat named Oscar. By most accounts, Oscar was not a friendly animal. He kept to himself. He didn't like being held. He mostly ignored the patients and staff. But the staff began to notice a pattern. Every so often, Oscar would walk into a particular patient's room, jump up onto the bed, curl against them, and stay. He would not leave. And within a few hours, that patient would die. It happened again and again. The nurses started paying attention. Oscar correctly predicted dozens of deaths, by some accounts more than 50, often before the medical staff realized the end was close. He became so reliable that when Oscar settled in with a patient, the nurses would call the family to come say goodbye. In 2007, a physician named David Doza published an account of Oscar in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most respected medical publications in the world. Not as a ghost story, as a documented phenomenon worth taking seriously. So what was Oscar doing? Was he psychic? Did he sense some soul leaving the body? The answer turns out to be far stranger and far more real. He was smelling it. A dog's nose contains around 300 million olfactory receptors. A cat's around 200 million. Yours has about 6 million. These animals don't just smell better than we do. They live in an entirely different sensory universe, one built almost entirely out of scent. And a dying body is a chemical event. As cells break down, as organs begin to fail, as metabolism shifts in the final stages of life, the body releases a changing cocktail of chemical compounds, volatile organic compounds, scientists call them. We can't smell them. But to an animal with hundreds of millions of receptors, the approach of death may have a distinct and unmistakable odor. This isn't speculation. We know dogs can detect things in the human body we cannot. In controlled studies, dogs trained to smell breath and tissue samples have identified lung and breast cancer with accuracy rivaling laboratory equipment, sometimes flagging disease in samples that standard tests had missed. Dogs can sense a diabetic's blood sugar crashing and alert them before they collapse. They can detect the chemical changes that precede an epileptic seizure minutes before it happens. So when Oscar curled up with a dying patient, he probably wasn't sensing a soul. He was reading a signal, a shift in the body's chemistry that announced, in a language of scent, that the end was near. The mystery dissolves into biology, but that only answers half the question. If you're enjoying this kind of science meets philosophy storytelling, subscribe, because the second half of this question is where things get genuinely difficult. Because smelling death is not the same as understanding it, and this is where it gets hard. A dog can detect that a body is failing, but does the dog know what that means? Does it understand that its human is about to be gone, permanently, forever? Does it have any concept of death at all? Here, the evidence gets stranger and more haunting. In Tokyo in 1925, a dog named Hachikō waited at a train station every evening for his owner to return from work. One day, his owner died suddenly and never came home. Hachikō returned to that station at the same time every single day for nearly 10 years, until his own death. He could not have smelled anything. There was no chemical signal. There was only absence and a refusal to accept it. This pattern repeats across species. Elephants return to the bones of their dead, touching them gently with their trunks, sometimes years later. In 2018, an orca named Tahlequah lost her newborn calf and carried its body through the ocean for 17 days, refusing to let it sink. Chimpanzee mothers have been observed carrying their dead infants for weeks. Crows gather around their dead in what researchers genuinely call funerals. None of this is detection. You don't need to smell anything to wait at a station for 10 years or carry a body for 17 days. These are responses to absence, to loss, to the fact that something that was here is now gone and is not coming back. That looks, from the outside, like an animal that understands death, but from the outside is exactly the problem. We can watch what animals do. We cannot get inside what they feel. The philosopher Thomas Nagel framed this perfectly in 1974 with a famous question: what is it like to be a bat? His point was that no matter how much we study another creature's brain and behavior, we can never actually experience the world as it does. The inner life of another being is a door we cannot open. So we are left with two facts that don't quite resolve. Animals can detect death coming, and some of them clearly respond to death once it arrives. But whether they understand it, whether the dog at the bedroom door knows that its human is leaving and will never return, is something the science genuinely cannot reach. So, do dogs know we're going to die? They can smell it coming in a language we lost the ability to read a long time ago. Whether they understand it the way we do, that we can't say. But here's what's worth sitting with. We are the one animal that knows with total certainty that it is going to die, and we spend our entire lives looking away from it. We fill the silence. We stay busy. We push the thought to the edges and refuse to meet it until we have no choice. The dog doesn't look away. It stops eating. It lies down at the door. It stays. It does not understand death the way we do, maybe, but it does the one thing we have forgotten how to do. It refuses to leave. It stays present at the exact moment we've trained ourselves to flee. Maybe the dog doesn't know what we know, or maybe it knows something we used to, before the words, before the science, before we learned to spend a whole lifetime pretending the end isn't coming. The dog at the door isn't confused. It's remembering something we forgot.